Pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum, pasito tum.
Tim Burton has given us some of the strangest stories to be made for my Western generation. As much as he can be too repetitive with his formula, such as odd rejects as leads, its dark theme, similar artistic taste, obsession for Johnny Depp, he's been able to represent the weirdness as something that can be as fascinating as beautiful. That we shouldn't feel ashamed for how different someone is, instead embrace the oddness inside of us in spite of what's the common normality. But if it wasn't for the German silent films that inspired Tim Burton, we wouldn't have gotten the odd stories that resonated with us. The ones that made us feel okay to be expressive, emotional, or once again, an imaginative child that could charm or creep us out. So, how did these German films influence Tim Burton? Well, let me compare one of these silent films with one of Tim Burton's movies with none other than The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Edward Scissorhands. What did they have in common?
German Expressionism!
If I could describe German Expressionism, it's like the firstborn of many children that went to war and was surpassed by his later brothers who in the end went on being happy, while he became the emo of the family. But hey, at least it's creative. Weird, but creative. And that's where I can place German Expressionism. It's one of the earliest cinematic movements to come based on style and mood, which other movements would follow after, like the New Italian Realism, the French Wave, the New Brats of Hollywood. In the 1910s, Germany faced a disappointing loss in World War I, and their dissolution would be expressed through their art and media, most notably in the usage of Expressionism. In what many define German Expressionism is as follows. It's an artistic genre broadly defined as the rejection of Western conventions and the depiction of reality that is widely distorted for emotional effect. The style would reflect Germany's stressful mood, as they were less concerned to interpret realism, but rather a form of fantasy that could represent their emotions in that time. It would be the reason why horror and the unnatural were the most dominating genre for how it expressed their pessimism in Nosferatu, Faust, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. One of the characteristics of German Expressionism were the facial close-ups. Since this genre style was purely based on emotion, the faces would be exaggerated and expressive to show the dark, twisted emotions that the characters were going through. Another characteristic is the usage of distorted angles. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is best known for using plenty of distorted figures to show a crooked reality. It was to give it a form of abnormity and unpleasantness, almost like if you were watching a dream world polluted with nightmarish images. And another characteristic would be the heavy use of shadows. Expressionism in paintings often exaggerated their colors, but in film, it emphasized more the black to express the dark and depressive mood of Germany. By the start of the 30s, this style wouldn't last long in Germany after being banned by the Third Reich. However, German directors would immigrate to America, taking with them their Expressionism style that would later be Americanized in the monster horror universe, and the dark detective noir films that illustrated a pessimistic America with its mood and heavy shadows, just like in Germany. And as time went on, Tim Burton adopted this style of distorted figures, heavy shadows, character similarities, as he was first inspired by these classic horror monsters that were introduced because of German Expressionism. So recap, as a result of German Expressionism, Hollywood gave us horror monsters, noir films, Tim Burton, and some other Tim Burton copies. If you look at both plots, neither seem to be as comparable. One is about a somnambulist that's controlled by a madman, the other is about an unfinished creation that falls in love. But aside from that, they're similar in a way, based on the characters and the style. Both take place inside of a backlash, both have a young, disfigured outcast, and a master that made them. One is a kind, caring father figure, the other is a twisted evil man. Both freaks tend to have a romantic feeling, both are considered as monsters and are rejected by the people. Also, there's the German Expressive style where you can tell Tim Burton borrowed plenty of it from the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And I can't leave out their decade anniversary, This year, Dr. Caligari celebrates 100 years since its release, and Edward Scissorhands celebrates 30 years of its release. Well, what are the odds? One of the biggest differences, however, is their tone, especially how the directors portray their individual freaks. While Tim Burton has a more optimistic view about Edward, Robert Wiene has a more pessimistic view about Caesar. After all, if the character back then looked anything monstrous, deformed, or non-human-like, they were automatically the villains, with no redeeming quality and no reason to sympathize with them. There were some exceptions, but that was the norm nonetheless. If you looked too different, you were the bad guy. Tim Burton, on the other hand, grew up relating more to the classic monsters. After all, he was considered a weird kid, not able to relate to his suburban parents. Even got fired from Disney after making his short films for kids too scary and creepy. But through the horror monsters, he developed his view of the sympathetic outcast. The outlook view that you don't need to fit in to be special. You're not a monster if you're different. Sometimes the world is. In the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, Caesar is portrayed as a monster with no redeeming quality, while Edward is the innocent one, where the suburban neighbors are the true monsters. Caesar was made to kill and destroy, Edward was made to build and innovate. Caesar doesn't understand human emotions, Edward was made to understand human emotions. Both Caesar and Edward are an attraction to people, but for different reasons. Caesar attracts an audience for telling them when they're going to die, only to kill them at the same night. Edward attracts an audience for his skills on building shapes and figures with his scissor hands. Caesar doesn't care to fit in society. Edward at first tries to fit in, only to be used by others' own benefits, leading him to be outcasted in the end. The relationship between each outcast and master are polar opposite. Dr. Caligari uses Caesar for control and for his journey to power. Vincent Price creates Edward for the simple reason of, what if a robot could feel love? Caesar is used as a henchman for Dr. Caligari's crimes. They're the brain and the brute relationship. Edward's relationship with his creator is like that of Pinocchio and Geppetto, only much darker and depressing. He's the father that teaches him how to become a real boy, but doesn't live long enough to make his dream come true.
Where are your parents? Your mother? Your father?
He didn't wake up.
How each flashback ends reveals that one story was real and the other one was not. The ending for Dr. Caligari is dark and twisted when it turns out that maybe the narrator was making it all up since he's an asylum patient. But the twist in the end, which might have been the first ever twist in film, leaves us ambiguous guessing whether the story was real or not. Edward Scissorhands turns out to be true, but it's more optimistic with its ending. Even though he doesn't get finished or has the public admiration in the end, the biggest gift that his master could ever give him was to have feelings of love. So those that could see through his oddness would give him some affection in return.
I can't.
In the end, not only does he learn how to love, but he gets to receive love back in return.
I love you.
I can see the ending of Dr. Caligari happening in the real world more than I can see the ending of Edward Scissorhands. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is not only a relic that started a horror genre, it's a film that perfected the German Expressive style, introducing us into other cinematic styles that shaped our movies, as I mentioned earlier. However, Tim Burton followed one of the oldest rules in German Expressionism, that it's not about realism, it's about emotion. Does the story make any sense? No. But with the help of Danny Elfman's score, you feel attached to Edward emotionally, hoping that he gets the happy ending he needs. It's still melancholic, but it's a moment that makes you feel happy and sad at the same time. Sad because he's doomed to live alone for all eternity, and happy that he received the affection of someone and it will live on in his memory forever. Not for being like the others, but for being different. So, do you have an opinion on German Expressionism? Do you have some favorite or least favorite Tim Burton films? Leave your thoughts on the comment section to see what you thought about them. And if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe for more content. Well guys, tune in next time because when I get back, I didn't think I was gonna do this, but I'll do it. I want to show you the behind the scenes of how do I make my videos where I will tell you my real name. So for now, that's it for today. Ciao.
Pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum.